Hi guys, Ronnie here and welcome to the workshop. In this video I'm going to show you all of my tools and I'm going to discuss at each of them at which one is going to be actually useful for your home workshop and which one can be left for the local bike store to own in case you need it. So let's just start with the first and perhaps the most commonly used tools on a bicycle, and that are the Allen keys. Now I have different sets of those and the reason for that is that I like to have a straight one and a ball-headed one for each size, from let's say 2 mil up to 6 or 8 mil, because these are the ones that are most commonly used. And the reason I want to have each of these is because on some bikes there are bolts that you can't reach very easily with a straight one, but on the other hand the ones you do are best tightened without the ball head, so with the straight edge to not damage the ball, to make it last longer. Of course, if you don't service too many bikes at home, then probably this is going to be overkill, so a high quality set of Allen keys like these, for example, these are from Beta, an older model. These all have a straight and a ball head as well, so they will serve you right. I also have this whole Silca kit, which is also very nice, and it comes in this very useful bag that I can just leave over here on the work stand, and I really like to use it. I use it most of the time. And another thing that's becoming more and more common on bicycles are Torx keys, and I'm quite a fan of those because they are hard to strip, so they're more foolproof, longer lasting perhaps. I have a selection of these, different ones as well, but remember we also use or we service motorbikes here as well, so we need sizes that may not be necessary on a bicycle, but the ones you will generally need are a T25 and a T27, perhaps a T20. The rest of them are not very common on bicycles at all. In terms of wrenches, again, the ones you actually need for a bicycle are, well, this is a 12, not very common. You need a 13 if you have SRAM red brakes, because that's how you adjust those. And of course you need a 15 for the pedals. Otherwise, the rest of the sizes are not very common. If you own a nice high-end bike, then you'll probably be advised to buy a torque wrench with some bits, of course, otherwise it's useless. I generally use this one. This is made by Worth and I've had it for years. It's very nice quality and it's accurate from 4 to 20 Newton meters, which is just fine with most bicycle torque specifications. However, the torque specs you get on a bike are rarely different from 5 or perhaps 7 Newton meters. So lately I've began using these little Bontrager preset torque keys because they are much quicker to use, and generally these are the only torque, or 99% of the time these are the torque settings and both sizes that you're going to use. So if you have your own home workshop and work on a bike, you really only need one from 0 to 20 and a couple of bits for that. If you do more work on bikes and perhaps some other things as well, then these could come in handy to speed up the work. One thing that's associated with it, I have this little calibrated weight. This is 5 kilos plus or minus 5 grams. So it's very, very accurate, and I use it to calibrate power meters and the torque keys as well, or the torque wrenches, sorry. So again, if you're not a professional user, this isn't going to be too helpful. You can just trust your local bike shop for that. And of course, I have some regular bike scales as well. I'm not much of a weight weenie, but sometimes I do measure stuff. Now to address the elephant in the room, bottom brackets, and specifically the press fit ones. So nowadays I rarely do bikes that have threaded bottom brackets. This is a tool for those. I wanted to upgrade to something a bit more appropriate for the workshop, but then I realized I've probably used it only once on the threaded bottom bracket, but it's also useful now for installing center lock disc brakes, so this might come in handy. And if you do regular bottom bracket service yourself, and you have perhaps a bike or multiple bikes with different standards, then a kit like this will also come in handy, although it's quite expensive for home use. So if you don't have all the drifts for it, then it's going to be useless anyway. So unless you're a very advanced user, then again this is probably best left for the bike shop. As you can see, I have many different kinds of drifts, so I can do virtually any bottom bracket combination, and I can also do hub bearings as well, although that's not a job I do very often, to be honest, because they seem to last quite long. Of course, bottom brackets are not just to be installed, they need to be removed as well, and these removing tools from Park Tool, it's the BBT90. This is for standard 24mm spindle bottom brackets. This is for the oversized ones, so 30mm. These are invaluable when you want to remove a bottom bracket, and I don't use anything else. This is possibly the only safe way to remove your bottom bracket. So if you don't have these, just go to your local bike shop, unless you want to risk damaging your frame, of course. Then, another common problem with modern bikes, internal cable routing. Again, for users who have one or maybe 2 or 3 highly integrated bikes, this is an invaluable investment. It's not very expensive. This is Park Tools IR 1.2, and it's excellent. I use this all the time. But there is one example where it doesn't help at all, and that's when you thread a shifter or brake cable through the frame and it doesn't have housing on it. So, for example, I don't know if I have a bike like that over here. Yeah, so for example, on this boon, you have a cable stop, and then the cable just runs freely all the way to the derailleur. In this occasion, it's much more easy just to thread that little Teflon liner through the frame and then the cable through that, and you're done. So, yeah, this is arguably just as important as the IR 1.2, sorry. Then also, of course, you need to cut the cables and the housings, and unless you have a proper tool for that, the cuts are not going to be very clean. So yeah, this is probably suitable for a home mechanic if you change your cables, inners, outers, then it's going to be useful and it's not too expensive either. Then, if a bike has bad shifting, oftentimes the case or the problem is caused by a misaligned hanger, and this is the perfect tool for that. This is DAG 2.2. Although it can be very useful, it's an expensive tool, and if you don't service a lot of bikes, then again this is probably not for your home mechanic. What is, however, and probably anyone has had a situation where a change of the cassette was necessary, and for that you're going to need a lock ring tool and a chain whip. So again, really useful for your home workshop even if you don't do too much service. I also have a separate lock ring tool. I don't use this much too often. And keep in mind that if you run Campagnolo group sets on your bikes, then those use a different standard of this lock ring tool. So keep that in mind. Same goes for the bottom brackets. I forgot to mention. These are for every bottom bracket you can imagine, except the two Campagnolo ones. They have the bearings pressed onto the spindle, so it's a different procedure. Then if you talk about wheels, professional touring stand. To be honest, my wheels don't need touring all that often, but still I get quite good use of this for applying tubeless tape, gluing on tubulars, checking the wheels for trueness of course, but usually they are just minor adjustments. So yeah, a touring stand like this definitely not necessary for the home mechanic. Same goes for the wheel alignment gauge. This is probably only necessary for a dedicated wheel builder, or perhaps if your wheel has been in a catastrophic incident and rebuilt afterwards. Again, not very useful for the average person. Then we have some tire levers. Of course, they are a necessary part of every home workshop, I think. These are from Crank Brothers. They're nice and sturdy, and yeah, probably good enough for removing even the toughest rim and tire combinations. So yeah, good quality product. Another wheel item, or items should I say, would be the spoke nipple drivers. So multiple of these for different standards, and then one for the internal nipples. And very useful wheel touring tool. This is the Park Tool tension meter. So if you want to have your wheels not just properly trued, but also to have the right tension on the spokes, this tool is again invaluable. If you're a professional, for the home mechanic, not really. Then, if you have stubborn tubeless setups and you have problems with those and don't really want to go for a dedicated compressor system for a workshop, if you're not a professional user, again it's not going to be worthwhile, then this is a nice little addition for that. This is a tire booster. So what you do is inflate this to a high pressure, and then you can just dump a large amount of air quickly into your tubeless tire. So hopefully that will make it seated, and it works probably with 99% of the effectivity of a proper compressor. So it's definitely a good thing. I don't use it in the workshop, but I race tubeless tires in cyclocross, and I carry this thing inflated into the pit area and for the races, in case I have some kind of problem. So that should just solve it quickly. And it's good for changing tires out at a race if you don't have access to compressor. Then if you talk about brakes, I have a SRAM Professional Bleed Kit. If you're an advanced user and you run a bike or multiple bikes with disc brakes, this is not too expensive and it has everything you need for SRAM brakes. They're very nice high quality syringes, so all professional grade, and I really like it. Shimano unfortunately don't make such kit, so bleeding those brakes is a bit more awkward. Or maybe they do, I just haven't been using Shimano all that much lately. But the SRAM kit is very, very good. Again, if you're a home mechanic, then I'm probably not going to make too much use of it. Then if you own all the bikes, then probably you need a crank extractor as well. I don't normally service those, but I do service Bosch e-bikes or e-bikes with Bosch motors, and there you need this to remove the cranks. Then in terms of cleaning the bike, I have some brushes and a chain cleaner on here. I use the brushes quite a lot. The chain cleaner, I haven't basically touched it ever since I use molten speed wax on my chains, because the bikes remain perfectly clean and the drivetrains. So if you wax your chain, then not very useful. Same goes for the chain keeper, because if I have wax chain on, then I don't want to contaminate it when washing the bike, so I just remove it because I use quick links. So then again, this becomes a bit redundant. If you use regular loops, however, it's very useful when you're washing your bike. For Shimano all-auto cranks, you also need this little device to adjust the preload, and it's very cheap. So I guess if you have a Shimano crank or Shimano group set, then this is a thing that's worth having around. Then if you talk about bottom bracket and bearing service, these are again very cheap items, syringes of different sizes. I use this for filling bearings and also speed fly pedals. So even if you're just a home mechanic, these are worth having. I've spoken about chains. So of course you need a dedicated chain removal tool to remove links, adjust your chain length. This is very useful even for a home mechanic. And also a pair of pliers for quick links. Now, this is not completely necessary, but it's not very expensive and it makes removing the chain a whole lot easier, and you can do it in 2 seconds basically. So it's worth having even in your home workshop. Then what you definitely are going to need is a chain wear indicator. Again, quite cheap, and in the long run it can save you a whole lot if you check your chain regularly for wear, because then you're not going to destroy your cassette and the rest of your drivetrain. If you run Shimano Di2 and you have multiple bikes, then you would probably make good use of the diagnostic tool that comes with Shimano Di2. It's quite expensive, but you can adjust all sorts of things, although with the newer group sets I think it's going to be redundant soon with the new eTube app and Bluetooth compatibility. Then if you talk inflation, I have 2 pumps that I use in my workshop. So the first one is which I use 99% of the time. This is the Silca Ultimate with the Hero chuck on it, and it's extremely expensive, but if you like nice things like me, or if you're a professional user, this is going to be definitely worth it. And I reckon it's the only pump I will ever need to buy, or you will ever need to buy, because it's completely serviceable. It's all metal, so the ultimate one is all steel, so I can't imagine it's ever being damaged. The dial is supposed to be accurate down to 1%, so that's useful when racing cyclocross, for example. The hose is very long, very nice to use. The lock-on chuck, excellent for disc wheels or tri-spoke wheels, anything like that. So it's a big investment, but I'm really happy with it. Previously, I've used this SKS rank compressor, which is quite a high quality pump again. The head is just plastic, so that's terrible. So I've upgraded that to a Silca chuck. This is basically the one that comes stock on the Ultimate. So now I have two very nice little pumps that I can use. Although, of course, if you compare these two, then this is a bit wobbly and not nearly as good, but still it does the job. And then finally, work stands. Now, if you have, or if you service your bike regularly and you wash it regularly, I really advise you to get yourself a proper work stand, even if you're not a professional user. I have two of these, so this is just a standard clamp-on stand, and I really prefer using this one rather. So with this, you clamp your front fork of your bike in this part, and then your bottom bracket rests here, and it's much more stable when doing maintenance jobs and also complete builds. So I use this one 99% of the time, and I think it's much more useful. Nowadays with carbon frames, you're not really supposed to clamp them anyway, even though this one has some very soft rubber inserts, so if you are careful, you're not going to damage it, but still, it's nowhere near as stable as a stand like this one. And then finally, for just regular storage, I use these super stands. They're made by Super B, and I think it's the best stand on the market. It's very stable, can hold basically any kind of bike outside of a fat bike. Although on some of them I have glued some foam in here just to keep the stand from scratching my deep section rims. It's not too expensive either, so if you have some higher quality bike, then it's really worth having. Okay, so I think I have covered every possibility here. I try to go into as much detail as possible so you can actually use these recommendations. If you'd like to know more about my bike setups and how I take care of them, then don't forget to tune into the channel and subscribe. It's all for today. Thanks for watching, and see you next time.